Recording, yes. Yep.
My guest today is Mark Friedlander, Director of Corporate Communications at the Insurance Information Institute, a think tank dedicated to providing objective, fact-based information about insurance. Today, we'll be talking about Florida and the insurance problems therein. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it, David.
So, first question, is there a problem in Florida? And if so, what is it?
Even long before Hurricane Ian formed the Atlantic, there were major problems in the Florida insurance marketplace. In fact, we consider Florida to be the most unstable property insurance market in the US in 2022, caused by what we consider to be a man-made crisis. What do I mean by that? Two key factors: roof replacement claim schemes and excessive levels of litigation are why the insurance market is in such turmoil today, and unfortunately even more so after the impacts of Hurricane Ian.
Do you have an idea for what the magnitude of these two things in terms of contributing to the problem are?
Well, here's what we've seen. Just looking at the last 2 years of losses for the insurance industry here in Florida, we had no direct hit hurricanes for the 2020 and 2021 seasons, yet we saw an average cumulative industry loss for the last 2 years of about $1.6 billion each year. That's underwriting losses. You don't see this in any other states in the country when there are no major catastrophes contributing to these losses.
So why is this a problem in Florida? It can't be a coincidence that you have Florida, the most catastrophe prone state in the world, or region in the world, I would say, probably. And then you also have this problem, which is, as you say, human created. Are they related? They must be related.
Florida has always been known as the U.S. capital of insurance fraud, whether it's auto insurance fraud or property insurance fraud. Florida is always a leader, and we've had these roofing contractors, and we'll call them a group of unscrupulous contractors. I don't want to put a blanket over all roofing contractors, but there are a group of unscrupulous contractors that are taking advantage of loopholes in Florida state regulations to solicit business door to door and basically scam homeowners into thinking they need their roof replaced and promising them a free roof if they just sign over the claim, which is called assignment of benefits. That's another big problem, assignment of benefits abuse. So the homeowner gets scammed thinking the roof really needs replacement when it doesn't. They've been told by this contractor, the insurance company is going to pay for everything. It's a free roof. Just sign here, we'll take care of everything. So the scammed homeowner signs it over, and then that's when the contractor goes to work on continuing the scam. They will replace the roof, but then they'll charge the insurance company double the market rate. So say it should be a $20,000 roof replacement if it's a legitimate roof job. They might send a bill to the insurer for $40,000. In most cases, the insurance companies are going to say, there's no way, we're not going to pay this. They reject it. Then this contractor gets together with, we'll call them unscrupulous trial attorneys. And unfortunately, Florida leads the nation in unscrupulous trial attorneys that love to sue insurance companies. This is their livelihood. They're making millions and millions on these lawsuits. In fact, there is one South Florida lawyer who boasts about suing insurance companies. He is on the Real Housewives of Miami, the reality TV show. He shows checks he has received from Florida insurance companies. He shows the yachts that he's bought with those checks. He's shown the private jets that he's bought with those checks. It's unbelievable, the volume of really unethical attorneys. There's no better way to say it. And some have been sanctioned by the Florida Bar Association. Unfortunately, not enough, but there have been some that have actually had their law licenses taken away, and there will be more in the future. I mean, there are literally law firms suing Florida insurers by the thousands. Right. And because of this, 6 Florida property insurers have gone insolvent this year. 6 companies have failed because of this excessive level of litigation.
So if we talk about kind of the chain here, an important thing that I want to kind of get my head around in this is the people in Florida, this is like an assumption I make, maybe you disagree, are people And there are unscrupulous people everywhere, in every state, in every walk of life, in every country. Yet in Florida, somehow they are superpowered, and they're able to achieve much more unscrupulous outcomes because of their unscrupulous, not only because, so there's something in this system here which is supporting this behavior, which you don't get in Idaho, I don't know, wherever else. What is that thing?
Well, here, let's just do a quick comparison. Florida, 107,000 property claim lawsuits in 2021, 81% of the US total. We've looked at all the other states. The next state on the list, California, 3,600. California is double the size of. Why is there such a difference? 3,600 in California with a 40 million population versus 21 million residents in Florida that accumulated 107,000 lawsuits. Regulations, much tighter, much stricter regulations, less loopholes. Because in Florida, most of these scammers are taking advantage of those loopholes. In most cases, they're not breaking the law. In some cases, they are breaking the law. For example, if a roofer goes up on your roof and intentionally causes damage to make it look like a storm hit your home when it really didn't. Yes, that is fraud. You will be arrested. You will be prosecuted. But in most cases, these unscrupulous contractors are not breaking the law. They're taking advantage of regulation loopholes that are much looser than other states. We don't see this anywhere else in the country. Nothing at this level.
Do you have an example of a loophole in Florida that doesn't exist elsewhere, California?
Specifically, we're not regulatory folks. So yeah,
okay.
We're probably not the best source for that. But
Right.
I can assure you that there are too many loopholes in general, and probably lobbyists would be better choices to explain this. But the point is, these unscrupulous contractors are getting away with this because they're technically not breaking the law. That's our takeaway on this.
Right. And the concept of assignment of benefits, that seems to me to be often one of the root causes, or maybe not the ultimate root, like some weird cultural factor, which I'd love to learn about. But the technical process of assigning the benefit of a claim over to a contractor. Is that something you can elaborate on a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there have been tighter restrictions put in place to protect homeowners when they sign an AOB. And for example, they could back out of the agreement. There's a certain time frame now that was put into place with new laws passed a few years ago. So there are some consumer protection benefits in AOBs, but in general, typically when a homeowner signs over an AOB, that's the last they hear of it. And it's all now in the hands of the contractor. And I know Florida's CFO, Jimmy Patronis, has been very public in his comments about ending AOB abuse to the point where he wants the legislature to enact a law that will eliminate AOBs, period, because we are in complete agreement with Mr. Patronis. There's no benefit to an AOB. To us, it's a roadmap to fraud. Once you've signed over that claim, then fraudulent acts occur, whether those are technically breaking the law or not breaking the law, it's still fraud. So maybe not in the eyes of the prosecutors, but in our eyes, it is fraud.
So this would be if I have a claim or I have damage to my house in some way, a contractor knocks on my door and says, "Hey, you should go to your insurance company to pay for this," and I say, "Well, I don't really. I mean, I don't know. It sounds like a lot of work. Is it really going to be worth it?" And they say, "How about we do this? You give me the claim payment for whatever it is, I get it, and I'm going to guarantee you a new roof or something like that, right? So I'll trade the claim payment for the new roof." And you're like, "Oh, well, I get a new roof. I just hand this over to you. Then, okay, I'll just get a new roof." That sounds like an easy trade. And now you're handing it to somebody who's a professional claimant. Their entire world is full of expertise of how to squeeze every penny out of the insurance company. And so they can massively increase the amount that they can retain by, I don't know, saying the magic word here and there at the different part of the process, and they can unlock more and more cash. And they actually wind up with 10x the recovery that a roof would cost. Is that kind of how it works?
Well, here's what's been going on after Hurricane Ian. This is a really good example on why Mr. Patronis has been so forthcoming in his comments about AOB abuse. Unscrupulous contractors combined with unlicensed public adjusters have been storm chasing. Basically, they are raiding neighborhoods that are most vulnerable to these schemes because these homeowners have lost their properties. They've been destroyed or severely damaged by Hurricane Ian. They are talking these homeowners into signing over their claims, saying, oh, you'll never get the full amount of your claim through the insurer unless we take care of it for you. Basically, they're saying, we will make sure you get the full amount and get a full replacement for your home. You're not going to do that on your own. It's a very difficult process. They basically scam the most vulnerable homeowners in their time of need. And they have been working neighborhoods literally since the hurricane struck in Southwest Florida. And I know there have been members of the CFO's office, Investigative Services Unit, as well as the National Insurance Crime Bureau, chasing these scammers and trying to arrest them, for illegal acts, basically, where they can, where they have actually broken the law. But it has been completely out of control since Hurricane Ian struck here in Florida.
So if you're a consumer and you don't like insurance companies, because that's where we all start in life. I hate insurers. I did probably before I joined the industry. And this all sounds like, okay, you're like, wait a minute. So I don't like insurance companies. Somebody shows up and tells me, and you're telling me, Mark, that they're really good at, beating up insurance companies. What's not to like, right? You can see the political attractant here, the thing that is like, that makes this popular potentially in some way.
When you're most vulnerable, you'll believe anything a scammer will tell you. And they will tell you,
right,
insurance companies are impossible to deal with. We know how to handle them. You sign it over, everything will be taken care of. And that's when the scam has begun. There is no benefit to signing an AOB, zero. And in fact, anytime a contractor or a public adjuster knocks on your door or catches you on the street and says, sign here, we're going to take care of it for you, tell them, no, thank you, have a good day, and walk the other direction. Never sign over anything, no matter what it is related to a claim, unsolicited. If you have not engaged this contractor, if you have not vetted this contractor either through your insurer or through other sources like the Chamber of Commerce, the Better Business Bureau, you don't know anything about this contractor, do not engage with them. Do not sign it over. Nothing but trouble. And we've never seen a positive benefit from an AOB in our analysis of this, not only in Florida, but across the country.
And let's say you had a debate about AOB, what would somebody look for as a positive benefit? Like, what's the intent? Like, what's the thing that should be happening in an idealistic world, and why you would want to pass a law allowing AOB?
Well, if it was done legitimately, perhaps a contractor could help you through the claim process, but we've never seen that. I can't give you any example of it being a positive benefit. The potential maybe, but never happens. Typically, all AOB is a roadmap to fraud. We don't see anything positive, and we recommend any situation, homeowners never sign an AOB. Not only homeowners, but we see the problem here in Florida with drivers. There are windshield replacement scams here in Florida. Thousands of lawsuits being filed per week here in Florida over windshield replacement scams. Now in Florida, for a windshield, it's covered under your comprehensive coverage, which about 80% of drivers have that coverage, and there's no deductible. So that makes it much easier to scam you because there's no deductible involved. So the homeowner doesn't have to pay even their deductible if they sign over the windshield replacement. Well, we've had for years unscrupulous windshield contractors. So another group of contractors, not roofing contractors. Now we're talking windshield replacement companies, soliciting business in parking lots, at car washes, at service station gas pumps, where they're saying, oh, I see a crack on your windshield. You know what? We can take care of that for you. Here, I'm going to give you $100 gift card to your favorite local restaurant if you sign this AOB, and we're going to handle everything. So instead of it being, say, a $200, $300 average replacement for a windshield, that's pretty much the typical average across Florida in the U.S. You've signed this over now. That windshield repair could end up being $10,000 or more, and you don't even know about it. You've signed it over. You have no idea, number one, what that unscrupulous windshield repair company is going to charge your insurer. Number two, they're going to file a lawsuit against your insurer because the insurer's not going to pay $5,000 for a $200 replacement. We're now talking $10, $15, $20,000 or more with the lawsuit involved for a $200 replacement for windshield. And the Florida legislature did address this a few years ago. They passed a bill. It was a bad bill. Actually, I take it back. They had an auto reform bill in last year's legislature. It did not address this. I'm sorry, I'm mistaken there. They have not addressed this. Hopefully, the new leadership of the legislature will consider this, because these fraud schemes fall under the radar because typically they're at a much lower level of cost than these home roof replacement schemes. But nevertheless, there are thousands and thousands of these taking place literally every month in Florida, and nobody's doing anything about it right now. So we've got the roof replacement scams and we've got the windshield replacement scams. Florida, once again, the U.S. capital of insurance fraud.
What are they doing to get a $1,000 windshield into a $20,000 claim? Like, do you know like the detail of how does that possibly make sense?
It doesn't, but and there have been insurance companies that have filed class actions against these windshield replacement companies. So it's gone both ways. Yeah, they're going after them because of all the scams. But the bottom line is they're taking a simple windshield replacement, which once again, no deductible in the state of Florida if you have comprehensive coverage, and turning it into a ridiculously priced replacement that has litigation on top of it when the insurance company fails to pay the bill. Then the lawsuit gets filed. So it's amazing. And once again, we have certain types of attorneys lined up to take these cases. They have no problem suing insurance companies. Sometimes, as I said, literally by the thousands.
So, I mean, back to kind of AOB for a sec, if maybe you can help me on this. I know that AOB exists elsewhere. I'm pretty sure it exists in the Northeast, in the area where I live. In any case, it's in other parts of the country, but we don't hear about it having these incredible consequences. Is there something else about it that's specific to Florida that make it different, or is it just Florida just has more of these entrepreneurs there, and who take advantage of the AOB there? I mean, it seems like it's not quite so catastrophic elsewhere. I don't hear about it anywhere else as a public policy.
We do hear of it in other states at small levels.
Okay.
Everything in Florida is magnified greatly. You know, for example, we are projecting, in terms of litigation expenses from Hurricane Ian, $10 to $20 billion in expenses that'll be incurred by insurers fighting lawsuits related to Hurricane Ian claims. Wow. We've never seen anything at that level in other states. You know, we've had major hurricanes in many areas of the country over the past decade. We don't hear about anything at this level. While we do still hear about a lot of litigation, nothing will surpass what we might see here in Florida. Once again, everything in Florida is magnified. Sometimes it's because of loopholes and regulations. Other times it's because Florida is so ripe with scammers to take advantage of consumers here in the state.
So let's say nothing happens, right? Your advocacy fails. Other insurance advocacy fails. The government succumbs to the influence of these probably very powerful interest groups, very wealthy and resourceful in every sense of the word interest groups who are fighting against you. What happens to insurance in Florida?
It continues to spiral downhill. That's the bad news. Bad news for the marketplace, bad news for every homeowner. Because right now, Florida homeowners are paying the highest average premium in the U.S. We estimated this summer the average premium $4,231 across the state. That's nearly triple the U.S. average of $1,544. The average increase year over year in Florida, 33%, U.S. average, 9%. Wow. And then that 33% year over year, that's on top of 25%, or basically, I think actually more than that, 27% the year prior. So 27% year over year from 2020 to 2021, another 6% higher this year, 33%. And with the expected increase in reinsurance costs that property insurers will need to purchase for the 2023 hurricane season, we'll see rates spike even more. And it wouldn't surprise us that the year-over-year increase next year will top 40%. Very possible here in Florida.
I would be sympathetic to the probably the eventual outcome of Florida still having the most expensive homeowners insurance in the country because of it's kind of this little thing sticking out into the Gulf of Mexico. It's the middle finger at Mother Nature is saying, "Hit me if you dare," and she will frequently. So that but the magnitude of that. Do you have an idea for just adjusting for kind of hurricane risk? What should Florida's
Well, let me give you a good example here. Reinsurance costs for this year. So let's compare Florida to another very vulnerable hurricane-prone state, Louisiana.
Great.
Louisiana has had 7 named storms for the past 2 seasons, meaning 2020 and 2021. Florida had 0. The average cost of reinsurance renewals in Louisiana for their property insurers, about 30%. Florida average 50%. Why is Florida so much higher? Okay, you could say, yeah, we're more vulnerable to hurricanes, the most hurricane-prone state historically. Got that. So that's always going to keep rates pretty high in Florida. But why is it nearly double the cost of reinsurance renewals in Florida compared to Louisiana? Litigation. The litigious environment. The global reinsurers indicated the state's litigious environment makes it very vulnerable to major losses, even without hurricanes. And it's very hard to model for that because they can model for hurricanes. Global reinsurers have great catastrophe models. They understand how to model for hurricane losses. They can't model for uncontrolled levels of litigation. And that's why it's 50% this year. It could be much higher next year. And several reinsurers have already indicated they're not coming back to Florida, meaning they will not offer coverage to Florida insurers next year. So it's very possible many of these struggling small regional Florida insurers, the ones that are based here in Florida, primarily write residential business here, they may not be able to get full reinsurance programs next year. That could put them out of business because without a full reinsurance program, most likely they cannot maintain a high financial rating. They typically need an A rating to continue to operate. Without a full reinsurance backstop, they can't operate because they're not going to have that rating. So we could see many more of the smaller struggling insurers fail because of the litigious environment combined with the reinsurance problem, which is a result really of the litigious environment. That's why reinsurance is so expensive or difficult to secure in the first place. So it's all goes back to this out of control litigious environment here in Florida.
How about kind of to the original risk part of this? Because if one's contributing, so let's say you have 2 pieces of this puzzle, one of them is Florida's just inherent riskiness, it's going to get hit a lot, and the other one is this laissez-faire kind of regulatory culture, and that will impact I see that impacting 2 things. I see that, of course, as you're talking about litigation, but it also allows people probably to build wherever they want without thinking that they're necessarily, so some areas that are risky than others, and maybe there are restrictions on zoning or building codes and that kind of thing. Is there stuff that needs to get done there too?
Well, here's the thing. It's amazing. You'd think after seeing such a catastrophic event like Hurricane Ian and what it did to our Southwest Florida coastal communities along the Gulf, that people would be very hesitant to rebuild there or for investors to come in and buy properties and build new. Well, we've heard from the real estate market, and the real estate market tells us that investors are coming in by the dozens to buy up properties. They want to invest more in Southwest Florida than ever before. They see the potential there to make big dollars, on building new properties and selling those to those that want to pay for it on the market. And we see this not only in Florida, but across the country. You'd think coastal areas are so vulnerable to storm losses that people would shy away from building near the coast. Well, it's the opposite. Most people in the U.S. want to live near a coastline. I think 80% of the population lives near the coast in the US, whether it's the Atlantic coast, Gulf Coast, or West Coast, Pacific Coast. Everybody wants to be near an ocean or a gulf. No matter, forget the hazards. They want to live where they could go to the beach every day, apparently. Well, that sounds lovely. Sounds great till you suffer a loss. And what do you do now? If you have the right insurance coverage, which is all about financial protection, you'll recover. But we learned many of the homeowners that were devastated by losses from Ian did not have the right amount of coverage. Many of them dropped their flood insurance because they said it was getting too expensive. Well, it's expensive to live near the coast. You want to live in one of the most vulnerable locations in the country, you have to expect to pay higher than average insurance costs. And yes, home insurance is off the scale here in Florida. We already know that. It's the highest average in the country, according to our analysis. Flood insurance, it's getting more expensive, but still fairly reasonable. You need both property insurance and flood insurance to be fully financially protected so your family is not devastated after a loss. And then we moved in to inland communities. Look at Orlando, Metro Orlando, Central Florida. Most homeowners that suffered losses from Hurricane Ian in those communities, no flood insurance. In fact, the take-up rate in Central Florida for flood policies is roughly 2 to 4%. So that's virtually nobody. Everybody who suffered a loss is in a very financially vulnerable state. And they now have to rely on FEMA grants to help them recover. But FEMA grants only pay a small portion of what you lose. They're not insurance. FEMA grants do not replace insurance, unfortunately. That's not how it works.
Yeah, and Central Florida, very flat, lots of water everywhere. Easy to imagine flooding being a problem. Okay, so one more question. We'll close on this concept or this sort of this question, which is, what's the plan? What are the things that can be done between now and the next hurricane season, or just now, period, in your mind, in the legislature or however else that might help this problem improve?
Well, here's the thing. We are cautiously optimistic, I should say, that the new leadership of the legislature, meaning there's a new Senate president, there's a new House leader that are going to be in place after the elections in the fall, that they will take actions to help stabilize Florida's insurance market. That means addressing the AOB abuse, assignment of benefits abuse, as well as taking steps to disincentivize this massive volume of lawsuits that's getting filed year after year against Florida property insurers. Unless those type of actions are taken, we're just not going to see any roadmap to stability. So we're, once again, very hopeful that new leadership will put packages in place, well thought out bills that address these issues, and either in a special session that is scheduled for December, which is going to address several hurricane related issues, or in the regular session next year, which starts in March, that legislative actions are clearly needed to begin the road to stability here in Florida.
How do people help? Anything people in the insurance?
Well, first of all, the election's coming up. Make sure the state representatives and the state senators you're voting for have your best interests at heart, rather, when they're going to represent you. Make sure, check out the candidates' platforms, see how they stand on insurance reform. It's really important to have representatives in the state house that will take actions, because in the past, particularly the Florida House has been very reluctant to take steps to stop the trial bar. The trial bar, very strong lobbying group. They push back on all types of legislation that may have slowed down this train of lawsuits, this endless freight train, runaway freight train, we'll call it, the runaway freight train of lawsuits. They have not passed bills that would help stop that problem. We're hoping the new House will, with the leadership in place, but make sure your individual representatives that will be representing your districts understand the problem and are going to do something about it when the time comes.
My guest today is Mark Friedlander, Director of Communications at the III. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. Greatly appreciate it.
All right. That's a wrap.
You good?
Yeah,
we're good.
perfect.
Good
Thank you very
conversation.
much.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, because we're just not the lobbying folks. So when it gets into regulatory nitty gritty, we're just not. We don't analyze.